Live from Washington, this is BBC News. Republican senators working to advance President Trump's signature budget bill, as several lawmakers still say they're not convinced. Health officials in Gaza say Israeli airstrikes have killed 81 people in the past 24 hours. Serbian police and anti-government protesters clashed in the capital Belgrade following a rally calling for early elections. And politics front and center at Britain's biggest music festival, Glastonbury. Two controversial acts taking center stage on Saturday. Hello, I'm Carl Nassman. Welcome to the program. We begin here in Washington. Senate Republicans are racing to advance a budget bill that is pivotal to President Trump's second-term agenda. You see the scene live there now, not as many senators in their seats as we saw before. But of course, this is all ahead of a self-imposed 4th of July deadline. They're looking to get that bill back to the House and then onto the desk of the president. Party leadership has been working to get an initial vote today on what the president has called his big, beautiful bill. They are facing resistance, though, from a few Republican senators. They can only afford to lose 3 Republican votes in total. Now, the bill features tax cuts and additional requirements to qualify for Medicaid. That's a government assistance program for low-income Americans to provide health care. There's also some cuts in there to Social Security and tax cuts on clean energy as well. Now, in the latest twist, the Senate Minority Leader, Democrat Chuck Schumer, says he'll force a reading of the entire bill. It's 940 pages, by the way. It's being seen as a potential delay tactic by the Democrats. But Mr. Schumer says the American people, quote, deserve to hear exactly what's in the bill. I've been speaking with Eric Wasson. He's a congressional reporter with Bloomberg News. He told us more about the status of the bill. Is it fair to say, Eric, that we're likely not going to see a vote today on this bill?
Actually, I think one might come together. What I'm hearing is that they're waiting for the Congressional Budget Office, that's the official scorekeeper in Congress, to come up with an estimate. Several fiscal conservatives want to see the final price tag on this bill before committing to voting to begin debate. But yes, we've seen all day President Trump and Senate leaders scrambling to get Republicans on board, trying to strike deals overnight. They changed the Medicaid provisions, providing new funds to rural hospitals. They also tried to get conservatives on board by moving up the expiration of things like the EV tax credit. And that's got Elon Musk very mad. His Tesla company directly benefits from that. These tax credits would go away, $7,500 for consumers, as soon as September 30th. So they're trying to strike these deals. We saw Tim Sheehy of Montana threatening to bring down the bill until he got a vote to strip public lands provisions from the bill that would have sold off millions of acres of federal land for housing. It's really down to the wire, but they may vote on this very well vote on this late tonight. And that sets off a series of procedures that could see us getting to final passage early Monday morning.
Eric, I know you've been following this closely. So, if we do see a vote in the Senate, is it clear right now to you that Republicans actually have the votes that they need to pass this bill? I believe they can afford to lose, 3 votes?
They can only afford to lose 3. Right now, big no votes are Tom Tillis. He's a Republican from North Carolina, somewhat moderate. He's up for re-election. He is very upset about the Medicaid cuts. Even though they delayed some of them by a year to 2032, he still feels that this would be devastating for Medicaid recipients and providers in his state. Ron Johnson, on the other hand, is a fiscal conservative. He wanted $5 trillion in cuts. This is probably closer to just about $1 trillion in spending cuts, just partially offset what's a more than $4 trillion tax cut, some of which conservatives believe is poorly designed. And then you have people like Rand Paul. The president golfed with him today to try to win him over. He doesn't want to raise the debt ceiling, but if they don't raise the debt ceiling, the U.S. could default on its payment obligations as soon as August.
What about these efforts by the Democrats? We heard the minority leader, Chuck Schumer. He wants this bill read out page by page. I don't think we'll see a single vote on this bill for the bill by the Democrats. How effective do you think the Democrats have been in trying to oppose basically the bill that has so many of the priorities of the president wrapped up in it?
Well, one thing they've been able to do is strip out provisions that don't comply with Senate rules. Basically, the Republicans are using a loophole that gets them around what normally is a 60-vote requirement in the Senate. You can pass things with just 50 votes if it's budget related. Now, Republicans tried to do a lot of things that weren't necessarily budget related, whether it was immigration regulations and so forth, and those were stripped out of the bill. For a while, it looked like their cuts to food stamps were out of the bill, but they found a way to rewrite that. So Democrats have been doing that kind of guerrilla parliamentary warfare. But I think the big moment for Democrats will be in the 2026 campaign, the midterms. They're planning to make this bill, which they believe will prove unpopular when Medicaid recipients and others find out that they're losing benefits, make that the centerpiece of the midterm campaign to try to at least win back the House and get some level of power in Washington where they're completely frozen out at the moment.
Eric, very briefly, if you don't mind, about 15 seconds left here, but President Trump had been speaking of a July 4th deadline. Is that likely now?
It's possible the House could come in and vote on it and get signed by Wednesday. The 4th of July, big holiday here, is next Friday. It's possible, but if they don't vote tonight on the first motion to proceed to start debate on this bill, that could very well slip.
Israeli airstrikes in Gaza have killed at least 81 people over the past 24 hours. That's according to the Hamas-run health ministry. Some of the latest footage shows a frantic effort to unearth tents buried in a strike near a stadium in Gaza City that was turned into a refugee camp. The Al-Shifa hospital said children were among those killed in that strike on that stadium. Our correspondent Dan Johnson has more from Jerusalem.
A number of incidents have been reported in the last 24 hours across Gaza. It's not clear exactly how many people have been caught up in exactly which incident, but we are told that at least 12 people were killed in an airstrike near to the Palestine stadium, and that's somewhere that had been sheltering displaced Palestinian refugees who were living in tents. One of the videos overnight showed families and relatives searching through the sand and rubble there, trying to find people who'd been caught up in that attack, and we're told that 8 people living in nearby apartments were also killed in that airstrike. But a number of other incidents reported involving either the Israeli Air Force or unmanned drones opening fire. There are also reports from the Gaza Civil Defense that 2 more Palestinians were killed queuing for aid. That's the sort of incident that we've seen repeatedly over the past month since the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation took over the running of the aid distribution network across Gaza. That organisation's come under criticism for the shortage of aid and the fact that these crowds have built up outside its centres repeatedly, which has led to these incidents of security guards or soldiers opening fire. We're told 2 more people killed in a similar incident today, and all these deaths and further injuries in continued airstrikes. No direct comment from Israel's military, but we're also waiting for further details. Difficult to get verification because we're not allowed to report independently in Gaza. We can't go there ourselves, so we're reliant on colleagues on the ground feeding us updates, material and pictures of exactly what has happened there. But this is all going to add to the pressure for renewed efforts to try to find a ceasefire in Gaza now.
Dan Johnson there reporting. I've been speaking with Yanti Saripto. She's the president and CEO of Save the Children US. 81 people, more than 400 people injured by Israeli strikes across Gaza in the past 24 hours. Children among those numbers. What's your reaction to these latest events and, of course, the impact on young people?
Well, thank you for keeping the spotlight on this. Look, it is a sadly all too familiar story and the pictures over these past, ever since October 7th. Over 50,000 people have died in Gaza, over 20,000 children. I mean, the population is incredibly young. Half the population of 2 million people who live there are children. So, of course, children are going to be hit and injured and maimed disproportionately to adults. Children have smaller bodies. The impact of bombs and shelling hits them much harder. Again, since March 2nd, Save the Children hasn't been able to get any new supplies in to deliver life-saving critical aid. Malnutrition is rampant there, which kills young children, of course, much, much faster than adults. So it is an absolutely horrific situation, completely man-made.
What needs to happen right now to keep children safe, even as Israel's military campaign is continuing?
We need to stop the shelling and the bombing. I don't see how the current situation is, A, helping children stay safe, or releasing any of the hostages or people in detention at all. We need to get aid in, clean water, baby formula, therapeutic food to treat these severely malnourished children, medicine and drugs. We have children in hospitals who are undergoing surgery and who wake up because there's not enough anesthetics anymore to keep them under. So all the basic supplies that you need in order to help a population who's desperate and completely weakened and malnourished, to help them survive. That is what we need to get in, and we need the shelling and the violence to stop.
Well, there is an aid system currently set up. This is the U.S. and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It's been really beset with violence and controversy. What do you make of that system and that foundation, and is it doing a good enough job of getting those supplies that you just mentioned to the people who need them?
We've been, and many of the other humanitarian organizations in Gaza have been very clear from the start that to set up a new structure with new teams in a incredibly complicated and violent context like this is not best practice humanitarian assistance. From January to March 2nd, when there was a ceasefire, all the humanitarian agencies, UN agencies, Save the Children and others were able to get truckloads in of supplies. We were able to run our health clinics. We were able to treat children in their communities for malnutrition, for diarrhea, for any other disease. We were able to do mental health and trauma support for young children in particular. So all these things were possible in that period that there was a ceasefire, and it was working. It was working at scale. To have now a limited set of distribution sites where only food is distributed, no medicine, no drugs, people have to walk for miles to get food boxes, then they have to walk back for miles with those food boxes. I personally don't see how that is any safer in terms of looting and violence for the people of Gaza, for people who are desperate for supplies. So no, that current system is completely inadequate and actually actively has the risk to do harm, as we have seen, because people have been killed during those distributions.
Briefly, if you don't mind, but before I let you go, we heard the U.S. president saying that he was hopeful that there could be a ceasefire agreed in the coming days. How hopeful are you about that prospect, and what would that mean for children in Gaza?
Well, that will mean everything. So, look, we are humanitarians. We never give up hope. So I sincerely hope, and I would urge everybody to do whatever it is they need to do to bring the violence to an end and to open the gates again and let trucks in. We have thousands of trucks waiting at the gates to come in. It's ready to go. There's food, there's medicines, there's shelter, there's clean water. We just need the system to operate.
Protesters in the Serbian capital Belgrade have clashed with police after a rally that drew tens of thousands of people calling for the populist government of Aleksandar Vučić to hold early elections. Police deployed stun grenades and tear gas to disperse the crowds. Protesters threw flares and projectiles. Almost 140,000 anti-government protesters gathered in the capital. That's according to the Independent Protest Monitor Archive of Public Gatherings. The number is significantly higher than an earlier estimate from police of around 36,000. The protest, though, comes after months of demonstrations across the country, including university shutdowns, urging Mr. Vučić's government to step down. The protesters accuse the Serbian president and his allies of ties to organized crime, violence against rivals, and curbing media freedoms. Those are all things that he has repeatedly denied. Let's get more now. We can talk to Helena Ivanov. She's an associate research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society think tank. Great to have you on the BBC. Just first of all, tell us more about the protest that we saw today and what's sparking such a large gathering of people there in Belgrade.
Well, all of these protests were triggered by the canopy collapse that happened on the 1st of November 2024 when 16 people were killed. The train station was recently reconstructed, and of course there are serious allegations of corruption. This And this is what started the protest. This is what started the university blockades. And ever since, we have really seen a political crisis that is the largest political crisis this country has faced, especially since the Serbian Progressive Party has assumed power. We've had over 300,000 people protest in Belgrade on the 15th of March, when allegedly the government has deployed a sound cannon against the peaceful protesters, according to Earshot organization in the UK. We've seen multiple other protests across the country. We've seen the students walk and run to many European cities, including Brussels and Strasbourg, to send the message to the international community that this government is corrupt, that this government has to leave. The latest demand that the students have is the snap elections. They basically want the government, the president in particular, to call for snap elections. They want to create their own list of MPs, and basically the students would transfer their trust and confidence into that new political list that would potentially run in the elections, which, as of today, the government is refusing to call for.
Yeah, so students calling for snap elections, the government obviously standing firm. What are the chances, do you think, that eventually we could see some sort of early election? I believe, are they scheduled for 2027? That would be the actual date where we would see elections.
They are scheduled for 2027, and it is a bit odd that the president is refusing to call for elections. We have seen the president always more than happy to call for elections in previous instances when we've had massive protests, including 1 in 5 million, which was a few years ago, as well as another round of major protests that we've seen after 2 mass shootings that happened in 2023. In both cases, people have demanded elections. In both cases, the president was happy to call for one. What is also important to say here is that when these protests began, the president said that he would always be more than happy to call for elections. So one must ask whether the reason why the government is so reluctant to call for elections is because they're doubtful that they would actually win as strongly as they are used to. But if this pressure continues, if the people continue to protest, if the institutions like the university are still blocked, I believe the more pressure there is, the more likely we are to see elections before the regular ones scheduled for 2027.
I know you've been watching these demonstrations themselves closely. Today, we heard protesters accusing the police of using excessive force. Tear gas was apparently used as well. What do you make of those claims and the way the government is handling its actual response to what we're seeing in the streets?
I think the government's response has overall, ever since the protests began, been disastrous. The violence has been deployed against the students many times. We have seen people who were sitting at the headquarters of the Serbian Progressive Party use baseball bats and broke a jaw of female student. We've seen multiple people ran the students over with their cars. We even have this thing where the government has basically set up a camp of fake students who allegedly want to study in the middle of the city center of Belgrade, basically shutting down a whole area of Belgrade, devastating the park, which is basically considered a national treasure. So I think across the board, the government has been making one bad move after another, which has further agitated people, which is exactly what contributes to the size and the momentum of the protests. You know, it's been 7 months and still 140,000 people were happy to go to the square of Slavia to protest against this government. And I think this is by and large also driven by the government's response to this situation.
You know, I wanted to ask you, and you touched on it there, but there were some demonstrations today backing President Vučić. You're saying that it's unlikely that the majority of those people there actually support the president. You know, what does the support right now look like within Serbia for this government?
Well, there is a lot of mounting evidence that a lot of people who have attended any pro-government protests have been driven by buses. There have been serious, from across the country, there have been serious allegations that a lot of these people have been blackmailed, serious allegations that a lot of these people have been bribed. So one is very doubtful as to whether these people are the genuine supporters of the president or whether they are there either because they're being blackmailed or because they're being financed to be there. In terms of the camp of fake students, thus far, apart from like 5 or 6 actual students, everybody else who has ever walked in that park, but in no shape or form actually look like genuine students. So again, it seems that the president has really struggled to get a support from the younger generations and the students in particular for this students who want to learn alleged camp that's been set up just outside the presidency and the National Assembly of Serbia.
Helena Ivanov, thank you for your time tonight, Associate Research Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society think tank. Around 100,000 people in Hungary have defied illegal threats from the government, taking part in the country's largest ever Pride March. Organizers estimate record numbers showing up in Budapest. That's despite the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's warning to LGBTQ rights activists. Police had issued a ban following changes in legislation restricting gatherings considered to be promoting homosexuality. They were instructed not to break up the march. but participants were told that they could face legal consequences. Budapest correspondent Nick Thorpe was there.
On a scorching summer's afternoon, tens of thousands of people marched through Budapest to celebrate Pride. Several times larger than previous years, as many Hungarians and people from across Europe or the world came here to celebrate liberal freedoms and tolerance, the right of expression, freedom of assembly. The police kept a low profile. The Prime Minister and his government, for their part, tried to reclaim the word pride. They posted photographs, they flooded the internet, especially Facebook and other social media, with images of what they are proud of, their children, their grandchildren, in an attempt to steer the narrative to reclaim the pride word. It's not known yet, as everyone celebrates victory this afternoon in Budapest, what legal consequences the organisers or the participants might face for taking part in what was, after all, a march which the government and the police declared to be illegal.
Well, police in the UK say they're assessing comments made by the Belfast rap group Kneecap at the Glastonbury Music Festival. Authorities are also looking into the punk duo Bob Vylan, who led chants of death to the Israel Defense Forces. The comments went out live on the BBC, and Britain's Culture Secretary has asked for an urgent explanation about the broadcast from the BBC Director General. Katie Razzle is at Glastonbury for us.
We were expecting one controversy. We knew already that Kneecap's set would be something that the BBC Today decided it wouldn't stream live, but there was an act before Kneecap on that same stage. They are called Bob Vylan. I was there, and they made comments that the BBC said tonight were deeply offensive, and the BBC has now said it won't be making that set available on demand. Bob Vylan, which is a punk rap duo, if you like, they talked about death to the Israeli Defense Forces, and they also advocated violence. Now, we know that Avon and Somerset Police are examining the videos of both bands' performances tonight to try and determine whether any criminal offence has been committed. But it is a controversial situation, certainly outside Glastonbury. That is, of course, making headlines. But here, as you can hear behind me, here the focus is about the music, and it's about headline acts like Neil Young, and of course the fact that earlier on this stage Pulp made a secret return. So there's a sort of difference between what's happening here at the festival and what's happening outside the festival.
Staying in the music world, K-pop's popularity continues to surge globally with growing streaming numbers and even more international recognition. One big sign of that, a sold-out show at one of Europe's biggest venues, the London O2 Arena. Our reporter Ola Shore sat down with the girl group aespa.
It's one of the biggest nights in the K-pop calendar. Thousands of fans from across the world packed out London's O2 Arena for SM Town Live.
So SM Town is finally back in Europe.
The concert series which showcases some of the most popular K-pop stars in the world. The group everyone wanted to see was aespa, who've just made history as the first K-pop girl group to perform in Africa. They told me what it meant to them.
Definitely a place I've always wanted to go, and I never expected, that we could perform there for even like a festival. So it was a very exciting experience for us, and we hope we can go back one day. It was really happy and historic moment for us.
Is it really nice to actually get out there and perform to your fans in person as well?
Yeah, it's crazy, especially when it's somewhere that we have not really been before, nor are we familiar with. So it was a very surreal experience.
For years, K-pop bands have prioritized performing in America. But with aespa's performance in Morocco and SM Town Live in London, it shows that the K-pop genre has truly exploded and is reaching more fans than ever.
So if you had one question for aespa, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. What is their workout routine? Because they're always looking good, and their facial routine, you know what I mean?
Karina, Giselle, Winter and Ning Ning's latest track, Dirty Work, racked up over 1 million pre-orders ahead of its debut.
First of all, Dirty Work is a song that we all were very happy with from the start, like from the demo. And so we were excited to go on and like make this our title song as well.
Is it K-pop summer now?
Well, I don't know, is it? I hope so, that'd be fun.
And if it is a K-pop summer, London's O2 was the season's first big stage. Lola Schroer, BBC News.
Here in Washington, summer lawmakers still working to get that bill out of the Senate. Let's jump in now to the Senate floor. You can see, the action or lack of action there. Of course, lawmakers, mostly Republicans, working to get the votes needed to advance that bill back to the House and then get that bill, which is really packed with President Trump's priorities, to the president's desk by his proposed deadline of July 4th. We could see a vote today. We'll keep monitoring the situation there. Of course, in the meantime, you can always get the latest news and headlines on our website. That's bbc.com/news. And we'll have the latest from Glastonbury as well. Stay with us. Lots more coming up at the top of the hour on BBC News.